this down to my boys and make sure that they can make a living.
Right.
You're taking that away from me,
Gareth.
and away from thousands of farmers.
Labour MP Lisa Nandy faces justified criticism from Welsh farmer Gareth Wyn Jones. Labour's policies towards farmers are not only unlikely to yield substantial profits, but are also cruel, inhumane, detrimental to the nation, and utterly unreasonable. In today's video, we'll explore their exchange and catch up on the latest news from across the country. Let's dive in.
Protect farmers, and I would just say to Gareth, I appreciate I'm not going to win him over on this programme, but do judge us by our actions, judge us by how you feel in 5 years' time.
Well, Gareth, do you want to respond?
I'm judging you by your actions already, with the promises that came and what you've delivered. This is going to be the last nail in the agricultural coffin. This country is going to need farmers once, twice, or 3 times every day. Food security should be at the top. You know, you should be looking at investing into agriculture to build the better Britain on our bellies, making sure the next generation has healthy, nutritional food. But what you're doing is you're going to push people out of the industry. And my family's been on this land for 375 years. It breaks my heart to think that I could be the last generation here. I want to pass.
Today's farmers are perplexed by the Labour government's decision to impose a tax in 2026 on the inheritance of agricultural assets that have traditionally been passed down from father to son at no cost for centuries. Now, inheriting a farm with a dozen cows and cheese production will require a payment of over £1 million to the Treasury. Starmer seems to be extracting every last resource from farmers to fund billions in the military-industrial complex and support the president of Ukraine. However, we need to consider the broader implications. Farmers have become increasingly marginalized in their own country, reminiscent of 500 years ago, when peasants were seen as an obstacle to the shift towards a predominantly sheep farming economy for cloth production.
This down to my boys and make sure that they can make a living.
Right.
You're taking that away from me,
Gareth,
and away from thousands of farmers in the United Kingdom.
Before I get
you.
Lisa to respond on that final point, particularly shame on you, Gareth, how much support, is there widespread support for this strike that you are joining?
Unbelievable, and it's not just widespread. I've got quite a big social media following, and a lot of people have been on board this morning, and a lot of the general public know there's going to be food inflations around the corner, and the poorer people, the people that Labour should be protecting, are the ones that won't be able to afford the food, because we're going to have to put a 20% hike on our foods.
All right, well,
and they have to listen.
Yes.
They have to listen for once to the people that are on the coalface. Don't do what Margaret Thatcher did to the miners. Protect your farmers going forward. We need you to steer our agricultural sector for food security, to make sure we can feed the poorer people in our society.
All right. In the 1980s, Margaret Thatcher's government faced significant challenges from the Sheffield miners, whose strikes destabilized the regime. And where are the miners today? Once considered the backbone of the British economy, they have largely faded from prominence. Similarly, what has happened to the metallurgists? Global corporations have long relocated their production to Asia. Now, farmers are expected to fade away as well, so they don't hinder corporations from transitioning Europeans to new food standards, such as consuming meat from worms and insects. It's quite remarkable, really, to see the British not only being encouraged to eat steaks made from processed larvae, but also to pay the price with their jobs and livelihoods. The perception was that farmers were too independent, they couldn't fit into the vision for a new European society. Migrants, on the other hand, are a different story. The leaders in London have never shown much concern for such matters.
I mean, is it true on principle? Why should and why is farming exempt in this way from inheritance tax, or has been?
Because food security is so vitally important to this country and to our future. And you know, the reason that there were exemptions around farms and farming was because of the centrally important role that that sector plays in the life of our nation. And I had a meeting with farmers in my very rural constituency just last Friday, and you know, Gareth's made the case far more eloquently than I could about the actual impact of these decisions and the cumulative impact of not just the changes to agricultural property relief, but also national insurance increases and everything else that's coming down the line as well, being squeezed by the supermarkets as farmers have been for far too long, energy prices out of control. A few years ago, fertiliser prices through the roof, all of the pressures being faced by the agricultural sector. The cumulative impact impact is becoming very difficult for farmers to deal with, but it's the sense of betrayal, because
British farmers are earning minimal profits on many goods, even as food prices continue to rise and supermarkets report record profits. For instance, farmers receive less than a penny for an average unit of cheese or a loaf of bread, and fruit producers fare little better, making only 3 pence for each bag of apples. The food charity Sustain conducted an analysis of 5 staple foods: apples, cheese, beef, burgers, carrots, and bread, and found that the slim profit margins prevent farmers from investing in more environmentally sustainable practices. A baker incurs a production cost of 9.03 pence for a loaf of bread, but only nets a profit of 0.9 pence, despite the loaf selling for £1.14. In contrast, a loaf sold at an independent bakery yields a profit of just 0.5 pence. Moreover, for a pack of 4 beef burgers sold in a supermarket, the processor earns 10 times more profit than the beef farmer.
It absolutely is. And Gareth, can I just say to you that, first of all, we did introduce a funding in the budget that is the biggest amount of funding ever committed by government for food security and nature, which we think will help significantly. But second of all, I would just say this, that those comments that you alluded to that were made by somebody who was last a Labour advisor when I was a teenager, I think are absolutely abhorrent. I come from a mining community. The damage that Margaret Thatcher did to our community, willfully and vindictively inflicted on us, we're still dealing with today. We would never seek to visit that on anybody. This is about trying to get our country back on track. We have inherited a difficult situation. You've just heard the opposition spokesperson telling you that he...
To address the issue of low payments for farmers, Sustain is urging ministers to require supermarkets to disclose more information about their supply chains. Additionally, they advocate for the government to establish regional structural funds aimed at investing in large-scale infrastructure, such as local processing centers, which can help shorten supply chain. Sustain also calls for legally binding codes of practice within the supply chain that would ensure supermarkets offer farmers a fair deal. Although our food systems incur high production and overhead costs, profits could be distributed more equitably throughout the supply chain, benefiting not only affordable food but also improving incomes for those working in the industry. It is striking how little of the money we spend on food actually reaches farmers and producers. Farmers face significant risks and work under challenging conditions, yet we expect them to maintain our landscapes and protect our natural environment. We also want them to take on even more responsibilities in the future, such as conserving nature and helping to reduce food-related greenhouse gas emissions by 30%. To accomplish these goals, farmers need more financial support. This funding should not be siphoned off by intermediaries in the food industry and supermarkets.
A final question to you, Gareth. Will your family farm be impacted by the changes on inheritance tax? We heard Lisa Nandy echoing the government's line that actually farms under £3 million will be exempted. So will it affect yours?
Yes, and I think you've got to take into consideration everything that we own. You know, this is a working landscape. Our houses, everything that surrounds us is part of our businesses. My father's 88 and he still works 7 days a week. He's never had the passport. He's never been on holiday. He's been here to feed people affordably. That's why there wasn't inheritance tax on this land, so we could feed the nation affordably. That's what you want to remember. And don't forget, never bite the hand that feeds you, because I believe that the Labour government have woken a sleeping giant, and they shouldn't do that. They should be working with us. There's ways and means we can have these taxes, but the people that are producing the food and feeding you, they are not the ones you should be hammering.
Gareth,
British farmers are currently in a state of alarm due to a shortage of seasonal agricultural workers following the country's exit from the EU. Stephen Taylor, managing director of Winterwood Farms, Europe's largest blueberry producer, reports a 19% decline in the number of foreign workers. Previously, the company would receive around 20 applications daily from individuals wanting to come to the UK for harvesting, but that number has now dropped to a maximum of 2. The government has promised to assist farmers in this predicament, but the current situation raises concerns. What are your thoughts on this video? Share your opinions in the comments and we'll see you later.